I'm meteorologist John Dawson. This is the Fox 26 tropical forecast, that discussion, that look at what's happening in the Atlantic Basin. We do this just for YouTube. We want to make sure you have an opportunity to really sort of dive into things and talk about it a little bit. If you haven't subscribed to YouTube, just like all your other subscriptions, make sure you jump in there. For the Fox 26 channel, you're gonna get these updates daily, every day of hurricane season. We'll be doing this, and then also, if necessary, we might jump in more than once. But we like it when it's quiet, and that's what we're looking at right now. In the Atlantic, we're seeing things that are quiet. At this point, the National Hurricane Center giving us that message that we love to see all throughout the hurricane season. No tropical cyclone formation is expected over the next 7 days. So I'll continue to appreciate anytime we get that messaging, because if something were to get developed, the waters are so warm right now, that's certainly going to be a situation in which a storm could flare up in its strength quite quickly. And in a minute, we're going to talk about where we normally watch for in July, and you'll notice it's these areas where the water is so warm at this point in time. But anywhere really across the Atlantic, there could be one of those situations where things are just very, very warm at this point in time. Now, I'm going to pause for just a minute and talk about Atlantic, and I'm going to switch over and talk about the Pacific, because that is where we've had some activity, and we've had Adrian and Beatriz, and these two systems are on the downsizing right now. Adrian was a hurricane, now a tropical storm, and now this is just sort of remnants. No longer a depression or a tropical of a storm, just some remnants of what's left over of Beatriz at this point in time over on the west coast of Mexico. Still opportunity to make a lot of showers and rain, of course, but that wind threat certainly not going to be there. And again, we're thankful to see Adrian beginning to fall apart as well. So again, I just want to touch on the tropics, or for the Pacific side of things, for just a moment. Now, I talked about July. We've made it. It's July 1st, and we're going to talk about where we watch a little bit more for the month of July. And in those of you who have joined us regularly here during the month of June, we've talked about this same kind of a map in June, and you'll notice that these areas are going to be very similar. We do sort of spread out and cover the entire Gulf of Mexico, where mostly we were looking at the southwest and the western portions of the Gulf of Mexico in June. But historically speaking, now we begin to talk about the entire Gulf of Mexico as a breeding ground of where we might see a tropical cyclone form. Like in June, we're also continuing to watch the Caribbean, and same thing. It was just the Western Caribbean. Now it's creeped over a little bit more towards the central as far as this zone, this area where we historically have seen formations. The Bahamas were another area, now creeping up a little bit higher, even beginning to get a little bit more of that southeast coast of the U.S. is another spot. And then this is the new one. In July, we're also beginning to watch the Atlantic a little bit more. Not far eastern side of the Atlantic, but definitely the western portion of the Atlantic. And the conditions are getting a little bit more ripe. And a lot of that having to do with the water temperature. Traditionally or historically speaking, what we've talked about. This year, we've just got abnormally warm water, and so we've had a lot of that activity. As we jump to the map here, or I'm sorry, of our graph that talks about, again, looking at the numbers that we've seen through time, we would normally expect, again, maybe a storm or two forming in the month of July. But what is to note, especially with these warm waters out there, is what gets my attention, is this darker reddish shading that indicates the major hurricanes. We don't normally see that in June, but when we get into July, if you look really close to your map there, you can start to see a little bit of that taking place. Now, obviously, we get into August and into September, that's when we really see major hurricanes, a category 3, 4, or 5 on the Saffir-Simpson scale. But not in June, but in July, we begin to see a little bit of that showing up on our history somewhat. So I would think that we could have storms, if one were to form, kind of flare up quite quickly. But hopefully maybe not for very long if we do see something. So that's a good reason to sort of stay in touch. And as we're able to sort of dive into things and talk about things, we'll start talking about it 7 days out and 5 days out and 4 days out and 3. And so as we get a little bit more large. So continue to check back with us. We'll continue to keep you updated, and you can kind of continue to refresh your plans and your preparations that are needed. I hope you are following me on social media as well. If you're not, I want to give you that official invitation. You know what a crazy show it is on Twitter right now, but I'm still there for now. It still exists, still happening. And then, of course, Facebook and Instagram, other great ways to connect. I'm at John Dawson, Fox 26. I'll be back here tomorrow around 4 p.m. Central Time with another update on the tropics.